Betty Lou and the Freedom Quilt. Down south, where the nights were thick and the roads belonged to men with guns and questions, a girl named Betty Lou learned early that freedom didn't always come with a trumpet. Sometimes freedom came like a whisper, a hand squeeze, a look held too long, a hymn sung a little different, and a quilt hung on a line like it was just drying in the sun. Visuals. Slow pan over quilt fabric textures. Old road at night, moonlight through trees, close up. Hands stitching. A clothesline with a quilt stirring in wind, soft wind, distant night insects, the quilt that talked. Betty Lou was 15, old enough to work hard, young enough to still believe a hidden message could live in plain sight. She lived on a plantation where daylight belonged to overseers and nighttime belonged to prayers. Her mama stitched whenever she could, and when the needle moved, it was like her mama's spirit could breathe. One evening, Mama pulled a quilt from beneath a floorboard, wrapped in cloth, like it was something holy. Betty Lou, Mama said, voice low. You look at this quilt and you listen with your eyes. Betty Lou leaned close. Squares and shapes, dark and light. A pattern that didn't feel random like footsteps turned into cloth. Mama pointed to a block that looked like a twisted tool. Some folks call that monkey wrench, she whispered. Means get ready, fix what needs fixing, gather what you can carry. Betty Lou's stomach tightened. Ready for what? Mama didn't answer right away. She just kept pointing. A block like a paw print, sharp triangles that reminded Betty Lou of tracks by the creek. Bear's paw, Mama said. Follow the natural paths. Woods, water, trails folk don't watch. Then a block like a little house, one square in the center, brighter than the rest. Log cabin, Mama said. If you ever see one hanging with a red heart, pay attention. Might mean shelter. Betty Lou swallowed. Is it true? Mama's eyes shined in the dim light. It's what people say. It's what people hope. And sometimes hope is enough to guide your feet. Visuals. Illustrated quilt blocks labeled monkey wrench, bear's paw, log cabin, Mama's hands folding the quilt carefully, shadows on cabin wall. The decision. A week later, the plantation changed. Rumors crawled through the quarters like smoke. People were being sold. Families split. A name called out could mean goodbye forever. That night, the preacher came through quiet as a fox, Bible under his arm, eyes scanning the dark. He didn't say escape, not out loud. He only said, the Lord makes a way through waters you can't see. Then he slipped Mama a scrap of cloth, 2 words stitched in tiny thread. Tomorrow, midnight. Betty Lou felt her own heartbeat grow loud. Freedom wasn't a dream now. It was a time and a place. Mama pressed the quilt into Betty Lou's arms. If you go, she said, you carry this like it's a map and like it's a prayer, Betty Lou whispered. Are you coming? Mama held her face. My legs done carried me enough to carry you to the door. Your legs got to carry you through it. Betty Lou's eyes burned. She wanted to argue, but she understood. Mama was giving her something bigger than permission. Mama was giving her purpose. Close up on stitched words. Tomorrow, midnight. Mother and daughter embrace. Quilt folded into a bundle, night walkers. At midnight, the world looked different. Trees turned into watchmen. Every sound felt like it had teeth. Betty Lou slipped into the woods with 2 others, an older boy named Elijah and a woman named Miss Ruth, who didn't look back once. They met a man at the edge of a swamp. He wore plain clothes and carried no lantern. He spoke soft. "Name's Isaiah," he said. "Tonight you are not names, you are footsteps." He pointed up. "You see that dipper? Follow it to the bright star. Keep it on your right shoulder. North don't announce itself, but it stays true." Betty Lou lifted her eyes. The sky was a dark ocean, and there it was, the Big Dipper pouring into the North Star. Then Isaiah glanced at the quilt bundle in her arms. "You carryin' family cloth?" Betty Lou nodded. He didn't smile, but his voice warmed. "Good. Some folks used quilts for signals. Some folks just used 'em to survive the cold. Either way, cloth kept people alive." They walked in silence. When dogs barked far away, Isaiah lifted a hand freeze. When the barking faded, move. Visuals, stars graphic, Big Dipper North Star. Feet moving through leaves. A raised hand signaling stop. The quilt on the line. 2 nights later, after miles of mud and mosquitoes, they reached a small cabin tucked behind trees. No sign, no flag, no welcome mat, just a clothesline, and hanging there plain as day was a quilt. Betty Lou stared hard, her breath caught. She recognized the triangles sharp, pointing like birds in flight. Flying geese. Isaiah's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, careful, listening to the quiet. "Some say flying geese means follow the direction they point," he murmured. "Or it means the house is ready." He tapped the air once, then twice. The door opened, not wide, just enough. A woman's face appeared, older, steady. "Come in," she said. "Quick!" Inside, the cabin smelled like cornbread and ashes. The woman, Mrs. Quinn, didn't ask names. She poured water like she'd done it 1,000 times. On her table sat another quilt, square unfinished. Betty Lou saw it, and her throat tightened. Drunkard's Path, a winding pattern like a river that refused to be straight. Mrs. Quinn caught her looking and said, quiet as a vow, "Sometimes you don't walk straight. Sometimes you walk wise." That night they slept beneath quilts, stacked heavy like protection. Before dawn, Mrs. Quinn handed Betty Lou a small paper bundle, bread, dried fruit, and a strip of cloth with a single star stitched on it. "Keep moving north," she said, "and if you see a log cabin with a bright center, don't pass it by." Visuals: quilt online, flying geese pattern graphic, cabin interior, warm light. Drunkard's Path graphic overlay on a winding forest trail, a stitched star token in palm river of fear. Days later, they reached a river wide and dark, the kind of water that looks like it remembers every secret. Isaiah crouched low. "This water's a line," he whispered. "Cross it and the rules change." A small boat waited hidden in reeds. Someone unseen pushed it forward like they were pushing the future itself. Halfway across, voices cracked the air behind them. A shout, a dog, a splash. Betty Lou's hands clenched the quilt so tight her fingers hurt. Elijah whispered, "Betty Lou, look." She lifted her eyes. The North Star sat above them, steady, indifferent to fear. And Betty Lou realized something. The real code wasn't just cloth or stars. The code was people risking everything to move strangers from one shadow to the next. They reached the far bank. Isaiah pulled them into trees. "You're not done," he said, "but you're closer than you've ever been." Visuals: dark river crossing, distant torchlight behind, star overhead, hands pulling someone up the bank, the last quilt. Weeks later, after barns and basements and whispered prayers, Betty Lou stood in a place where the air felt different, like it belonged to her. A woman in a clean apron handed her a cup of warm tea. "You're safe," she said. Betty Lou looked down at the quilt creased, worn, smelling like smoke and pine and night. She touched the monkey wrench block. She remembered Mama saying, "Get ready." She touched Bear's paw. She remembered the creek and the woods. She touched log cabin. She remembered shelter in the dark. She touched flying geese. She remembered the quilt on the line. And then Betty Lou did something she never thought she'd do without fear. She unfolded the quilt in daylight. She laid it across her lap and began to stitch. Not because she was still running, but because she was building. In every careful pull of thread, she stitched a truth. They tried to make us property, but we became people who read the world, the sky, the river, the road, and yes, sometimes even a quilt on a line, and we walked ourselves into tomorrow. Visuals. Quilt unfolding in sunlight, needle and thread close-up, fade into montage, quilts, stars, hands, helping hands, and somewhere down south, a mother kept stitching too, because love is also a code that says, live. Historical fiction inspired by oral tradition and documented Underground Railroad history. Learn more. National Park Service Underground Railroad. Network to Freedom. Historians debate whether quilt patterns were a widespread standardized code system. Some communities preserve quilt code stories through oral tradition. What's not debated is this: secrecy mattered, networks mattered, and people used every tool they had, faith, geography, stars, and trust, to reach freedom.